take your seats? Oh. Can I ask you all, please, to take your seats so that we can start off with this afternoon's session? Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed your lunch and you feel revived and ready for a lively afternoon. There's one thing which I've been asked to mention, actually, is around tweeting. So if anyone likes to tweet, please use the hashtag. You can see it reflected on the wall. And also, just to let you know that the conference also has a Twitter feed and an account. It's at EU_ENV. So you can use that for the Twitter. So please feel free to tweet away if that's what you like doing. Just in terms of this afternoon, we are going to inject some really positive energy into this session. We've got 6 very distinguished speakers that are all passionate about the organizations they work for and what they do on a day-to-day basis. And I know that that's going to come through in their presentations. No pressure. But the title of the session is around the private sector taking action for sustainable water management. And this session has been designed in partnership with Water Europe, so a huge thank you to them also. And really the aim of this next hour is to recognize and showcase positive engagement with the private sector and to motivate further action and mainstreaming. So just on stage, by way of a quick introduction, we have Veronica Manfredi from the Commission, we have Koen van Nieuwarden from Nation's Pride, Gabriel Lopez Serrano from Microsoft, Valeria Balaclova from DuPont, David Martin from Ecolab, and last but not least, Cedric Iga from Nestlé. The way that this is going to work is that they're each going to come up and do a 5-minute presentation. They're going to present only 3 slides. The first slide is around what their organizations are doing around sustainable water management. The second slide is presenting some examples of what they have been doing and some case studies. And the third slide is really it's an ask to the Commission or to other public authorities around how we can better cooperate, what needs to be done, a call for action. And then there's one final point to make, and to ensure that none of you are going to go to sleep. We are going to have what we've called a people's choice, and essentially it allows you all to vote on what call to action you think is most powerful, what's going to have the biggest impact going forward. So make sure you listen carefully to the talks, and after the talks have been delivered, Veronica's going to lead a discussion with the different panelists. So that will also help you to form your opinion and to be able to vote. So I'm now going to hand over to Koen, who will deliver his first presentation. Thank you. There we are. Yes.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Puedo continuar en español, pero creo que es mejor en inglés. I'm delighted to be here. It's an honor. It's a true pleasure to present what we are doing in the field of water management. I represent the company Nature's Pride. And we are an importer of exotic fruits and vegetables. So you can see these fruits dancing around on the slide a little bit, some examples of the fruits that we work with. I work in the Sustainable Business Department of our company. It's a company based in the Netherlands, and we are a specialist in ready-to-eat fruit. So sometimes you go to the shop and you want to buy an avocado and it's really rock hard. Then you didn't buy an avocado from Nature's Pride. I'll stop the marketing here, right? We'll have we have 230 products coming from nearly 60 countries. Most of them are from the south, so it's Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Some of the countries are listed here, and we supply retailers and wholesalers in Europe. We work on water on 3 levels. And the closer you are to the drop, the more influence we have as a company. So the first level is we work on procurement and growers. This is, of course, the level that we have most influence. Nature's Pride can decide whether we buy from supplier A or from supplier B. So here we listed some of the actions we have taken. And we have our own water policy. You can check it out on our website. We started to map risks, and we're working on making water a buying criterion for our purchasers, the people that every day decide where they buy the fruit. And we started doing some water audits for irrigation and groundwater use. And I think if you think about water, the best way to tackle this issue is selecting your partners very carefully. The second level is sector engagement. So we work with our peers. We are part of an organization of 40 buying companies in Europe that buy fruits and vegetables. We work with WWF, with IDH, Sustainable Trade. There's a whole range of activities we develop. We participate in World Water Week in Sweden in last August. We want to learn, we want to share and collaborate. And the last and most difficult level is the catchment level. And this is where we have least influence, because Nature's Pride is only one buyer in one catchment. And we have only several growers in this catchment, but sometimes there are hundreds or thousands of growers in a catchment. So what there we want to do is promote collective action, be a supportive partner, because, and this will bring me to the next slide. I'll come back to this topic. It's probably better. My request to the European Commission. Well, I have first this slide from Peru. Peru is our biggest, most important sourcing country. Now, this slide is pretty impressive because you can see how much the fruit and vegetable export from Peru has grown over the years. Behind this slide are 800,000 jobs, many of which are for women. There is a poverty reduction over this period of time from 60 to little over 20%. Life expectancy has grown with 15 years. So there's really an incredible economic development based on this sector. It's the second most important sector in Peru after mining. Over here we have the challenge. So the straws are people in a catchment. And our growers can do very good water management in a catchment, but others can still take water. So we have to coordinate. And lots of people take water from the same catchment. If we don't coordinate, a catchment will still remain unsustainable. So this brings me to my request to the European Commission. It's very difficult for Nature's Pride to go to water authorities in a country like Peru because we're just one company. We can talk to our growers, we can be a supportive partner, but we would like to see and collaborate with the European Commission and see, well, how can we help countries like Peru improve their water governance, because it's a really tough subject to deal with. And how can growers access financial mechanisms to finance technological improvements? So the countries of origin, it's really about bringing knowledge, capacity and integrity. And in the countries from the European Union, it's really about bringing water into trade policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Koen, for that first presentation. Gabrielle, would you like to take your place on the stage? Thank you. Remember, 5 minutes.
I'd like to, and thank you. First, let me initiate by thanking the audience and also the fantastic Green European New Deal. We really look forward in contributing in basically collaborating in getting the continent in a clean, sustainable way. At Microsoft, we have one mission, and the mission is we want to empower every person and every organization in the planet to achieve more. To build a sustainable future, we focus in two key areas. First, we work to minimize the negative impact of our operations by investing in innovations for our data centers, for our campuses. And second, we work to maximize the positive impact of our products, platform, and policies, and empower organizations to build sustainable solutions. Our journey started approximately 7 years ago when we decided to implement an internal carbon fee. This internal carbon fee basically generated a virtuous circle that enabled us to invest in many areas of the company that I will mention, and also externally. We recently decided to double down our efforts because since 2012, Microsoft is a carbon neutral company. And we decided, hey, let's increase this fee. It's working. And now we are assigning to our business units around $15 per metric ton on all carbon emissions. So what we want to achieve with this carbon fee that creates basically a carbon fund is three main things. The first one is we want to maintain Microsoft as a carbon neutral company. And we also want to reduce our emissions to the environment. We are actually on our path to secure 75% by 2030 of cutting down our carbon emissions. On top of that, we are working to replace 100% what our operations consume in water-stressed regions by 2030. The second thing that we want to achieve with this fund is to keep investing on clean energy. Nowadays, by the end of this year, we trust that we will hit the target of 60% of clean energy for our data centers and for our entire operation. By 2023, we aspire to get 70% of that. And we are in the path to get 100% of clean energy. And third, and in my opinion, most importantly, these funds create resources to invest either internally in innovations or externally through programs like AI for Earth. In this type of programs, we collaborate with external parties that basically bring their ideas, and we can pilot them. We can actually bring our engineering resources from the IT perspective. And I can give you at least 3 examples that have worked pretty well. The first one is with a Danish company that basically has been doing research on imaging to reduce the evaporation of water in Uganda. By doing this research, what they are basically doing is increasing the yield with less resources. And this is very important for, as you know, for agriculture. The second project that I want to bring to your attention is one with a partner named Powell that in Norway, they piloted a product that basically traces all the leakages in the cities. The third one is relative to water consumptions in the cities and flooding. And this is from the city of Breda, who actually won a prize in 2016 as one of the most innovative solutions. But as you will note, all of this requires tons of data. It requires a cross-collaboration and requires to put water as a connector. Data is the enabler of these solutions, but all these solutions need to be co-produced. So our and this is where we think we can actually collaborate more with the Commission, because we need better legal frameworks, better policies for data sharing. All of this needs to work with not only with one vertical. We want to harness this technology and actually put it in the hands of those who will take most advantage of it, to make sure that everyone, everywhere, will work to protect the planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. Valeria.
Thank you so much. It's a true pleasure to be a part of such an important event. So we in DuPont, with our more than 200 years history, are very passionate about sustainability, especially sustainability through innovations. So we can help the people in different parts of the world to have access to better medicines, to more environmentally friendly transportation, to being protected at their workplaces in different kinds of the industry. But there is one important thing. There is nothing possible without water. No food available, no healthy and safe life. But with our expertise and one of the broadest portfolio of water treatment technologies in the market, we believe that we can both improve our own water footprint, but also make a bigger impact on the society while making drinking water more available and industries running in a more efficient way. So let me show you some examples. First of all, if you want to call yourself a truly water sustainable company, you need to start with your own home. That's why, as part of our 2030 sustainability goals, we committed to review water footprint across all our manufacturing sites, almost 200 of them globally. For example, now our plants in Spain and in France evaluating the opportunity to implement some water reuse or even go up to the minimum or zero liquid discharge. But also we feel personal responsibility to help those in need. So for example, we donated some drinking water plants to the local communities in Kenya and Ethiopia, where people suffer from the diseases because of the higher fluoride content in the water. On top of that, having more than 70 years experience in water treatment, we want to share our knowledge. We want to motivate, to educate future water specialists. So we collaborate with universities in many countries. Our colleagues run some classes there. We donate equipment for their labs. But unfortunately, no one can solve global water crisis alone. That's why we actively support partnerships, effective collaborations between both public and private sector to introduce so-called new water cycles. So for example, the projects in Spain, in Tarragona, water stress area, and Terneuzen, Netherlands, where local municipality partnered with the industry, with the water treatment companies and NGOs to purify urban wastewater and use it for the needs of the industry. Just these two projects every year help to save around 5 million cubes of fresh water for municipalities for the drinking water use. But talking more about specifically water reuse, it is so important, I would say it is crucial how it is supported by legislation. And if we will look at the global map of freshwater resources used by the segments, it's clear that agriculture is a major user. And here, European Union making exactly the right step, introducing the new legislation for the water reuse in the irrigation. That's perfect. But the question is, can we do more? I would say even differently, what exactly is needed for Europe? And to answer that question, let us look at another map, the same one, but for our region. There is no any other region in the world where industry is so big consumer of freshwater resources, taking so big portion of them. So we strongly believe that in order to avoid some drastic and really costly actions in the future, it's a time now to make industrial water reuse a reality, a simple routine, not just a projects driven by very few companies, exceptional projects. So we fully in line, we fully support the idea to develop the local European regulation regarding industrial reuse. And there are many projects done here in Europe, supported by Life Horizon programs, as well as in many other regions who already proved the doability, the effectiveness, and the cost-effectiveness of the water reuse in the industry. Of course, there is still lots of work to be done, effective financial mechanisms to be developed. The philosophy of this legislation can be very different, but we definitely can leverage some best practices from other regions who already do it now successfully. And we as DuPont want to offer to the European Commission our full support, our expertise, global and local, to facilitate the development of the European legislation for industrial water reuse, because water is too precious to be wasted. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria. Spot on time. And David from Ecolab.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this panel. So in a few minutes, I'm going to try and set the scene with you. So Ecolab, we provide a healthy environment, safe food, and as well, we help the industry preserve water. Our ambition is to, by 2030, be able to save the annual consumption of water for 1 billion people, which doesn't mean much when you think in numbers like this, but it's basically equivalent to the annual consumption of China. So clearly, water is at the heart of what Ecolab tries to do, and that's what I'm going to try and give you a few examples on. And I was trying to find an example where we could all relate. I think many of us have taken the train or the plane yesterday, and we're staying in a hotel. Average water consumption in a hotel per night is typically around 300 liters. One tends to think that water consumption comes mainly from the shower or from the towels. It actually mainly comes from the kitchen. And that's where the washing of the instruments, the water used to do the cooking. So basically some of the solutions we can provide, and this is an example we've given with Hilton globally, where we've provided connected solutions to basically reduce the consumption of water to clean all the material used in the hotel, and at the same time reduce the temperature, which as well helps to reduce the energy consumption. And that's when you start building a business case where saving water means saving energy, means saving money. And if you take this example and then start looking at how much water actually needs energy, for instance, in Europe, 40% of an electricity bill of a municipality goes into moving, pumping, treating water. And on the other side, energy needs water. So to produce energy, you need water. And when you even go a little bit further and you start looking at one of the latest JRC reports, some of the low carbon fuels actually are more water hungry than fossil fuel. So when you're thinking about going green, you obviously need to think about the water footprint, and that's where the connection lies between energy and water. And that's why more and more industry are trying to collaborate together, cross-sectorial, so water users, technology providers, water providers, in trying to find the best solutions, and as well maybe relevant asks to the legislator on how to help us be even more impactful. And I've given a few examples here, one taking place here in Europe, another one, and I think that was announced this week by the UN CO Water Mandate, as companies are trying to get together to drive water neutrality, and hope maybe we can go a bit more into the details of what this is. And Ecolab basically committing to the 1.5 degree commitment by 2050. So my ask to the Commission, again, water is never high enough on the radar. You tend to try and find hooks to find the right way to address it. And so there are many ways of trying to make water high on the agenda, trying to make water efficiency high on the agenda, and I've given a couple here, but I just wanted to focus on the link between water and energy. And as I was trying to show that link, and I think this morning there was as well a presentation referring to the nexus, there's a lot of opportunity to save energy within the water legislation. So bringing water energy efficiency measures within the water legislation would be a way to not only better preserve water, but as well preserve energy and have a positive impact on our carbon footprint. And why not try and have a zero leakage ambition with all the potential we could have around water saving and energy saving. So to kind of wrap up these few minutes, and I think bouncing back on some of the presentations we had early on today, if we want to go green, we obviously need to go blue. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Cedric, you can take the floor now.
So good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation. So at Nestlé, the water strategy has become quite simple, I would say. We actually apply strictly, and this is the strategy, the quotes that I wrote here from the Alliance for Water Stewardship standard that you might know, which is in essence a socially equitable, environmentally sustainable, and economically beneficial use of water achieved through a stakeholder-inclusive process that involves sites and catchment-based actions. That's really the essence of what this Alliance for Water Stewardship is promoting, and this is exactly what we apply in all the operations worldwide, meaning in a bit less than 500 factories. The ladder that you can see here on the screen is actually trying to demonstrate the efforts that needs to be done in each and every sites where we are operating at the level of the catchment. It goes from the left to the right, at the level of the factory first, so within the factory compound, to be sure that the maximum is done to use and reuse the water in the best way. So any kind of water-saving initiatives, knowing exactly how many liters, how many drops of water are going in this and that process, this is the very first step where we did a lot of efforts these last years, and we are now taking also the digital, I would say, path by having all this, a little bit as we saw this morning in one of the initiatives, by having really a very precise monitoring of the drop of water from the catchment all along the process and down to the wastewater treatment to be sure that we have the full control of this water along the processes. So this is the first step within the factory itself, and then all the different steps that you can see that are going along this ladder are going beyond the fence of the factory. So first, and obviously protecting the source at the catchment level, so with all the investigations that are done from geologists, hydrogeologists, in terms of vulnerability, and to really have a good knowledge of the water cycle everywhere we operate. And then the next step, which is also has become absolutely key, is really the sharing of this information. So all these, I'm a geologist and hydrogeologist, sorry, the fascinating information from the water cycle, but we need to make this information accessible. We need to understand to non-specialists what we are talking about, and would it be first by talking about the water balance in a watershed, which is the very basic, and I like the image that you used just before with the straws in the glass, because if we want to conceptualize, this is the way we need to do so. And then behind this, we need, of course, where it matters, contribute to the communities. And finally, by having all this on the table, to strive for collective solutions, meaning by engaging with the local stakeholders, again, within a watershed, in order to be sure that we can, together, first of all, assess the risk, but also bring some innovative solutions that are win-win-win solutions. That's the essence of this program, which is the Water Stewardship Strategy. Now I just take an example to illustrate what I had at the very beginning in terms of sharing the knowledge. So systematically, and the objective is not you to read the text, but in essence, these are posters that we are doing everywhere that aims at first explaining what we understand as water stewardship, which is highlighting in a water catchment, as you can see here, for instance, what are the shared water challenges. So this takes place by going together with the different stakeholders and putting on the table the different challenges that are existing. We try to put all the information that are necessary to understand from the recharge, so the rainfalls, but also from the discharge, what are the usage that are done, and us including, of course, and to highlight the water balance which is there. And then we invite all these different stakeholders. We do this systematically in order, again, to put all this on the table and to see how we can convert the different threats or challenges that are taking place in a watershed into opportunities. And in this case, typically, in this small watershed, there were several opportunities that were identified together with the local stakeholders. All these, the challenges were assessed first, of course, according to the SDGs, but also according to the outcome of this AWS, Alliance for Water Stewardship approach. And that helped us to be around the table and to identify the different opportunities, which are, as you can see, essentially implementation of ecological networks with more than 70 farmers, natural filtration along a small stream, sustainable farming practices with more than 30 farmers, and also at the core of all this, a biogas station which is converting a threat for the groundwater, manure, 30,000 tons of manure, into renewable energy for the benefit of all. So this process and this engagement with the stakeholders is really what is the essence of this approach, and this is why I come to the questions actually to the public authorities. If in terms of integrated water resource management policies, if as a principle it could help first to create the knowledge around the watersheds and the local water balance, because this is the very start of the discussion, and second, enabling these conditions or facilitating these conditions for all these collaborative efforts that are necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cedric. So it's clear there's lots of action happening, and we've had 5 great presentations, lots of messages to get across in just 5 minutes. And really, I think we've all heard a number of messages coming through around stakeholder engagement, partnerships, and collaboration. Collaboration, we cannot do this alone. We need to collaborate and work together. I just wanted to quickly remind everyone in the room before Veronica leads her discussion of what the key asks or requests for action that each one of on the stage has made. So just starting with Koen from Nature's Pride, he was really asking around developing what can be done to develop better trade agreements. Gabrielle at Microsoft wants to establish appropriate legal frameworks for improved data sharing. Valeria at DuPont wants to recognize the importance of water reuse for industry. David at Ecolab wants to address energy performance within the EU water legislation. And Cedric at Nestlé wants to support collaborative action to find better solutions. So I hope that I have represented your asks okay. And with that, really, I would like to hand over to Veronica to lead this discussion.
Thank you so much, Fiona. Actually, I'm so pleased that I have to reply to these excellent questions just the day after the adoption of the Green Deal, because I think that a lot of your questions are directly addressed in the European Green Deal, and in any event, the Green Deal opens work strands that will allow us to provide reply. Let me be more specific. First of all, the point which has been raised by Cedric about, trade policy ultimately, and how can somehow the European Union enhance cooperation with third countries where there are really clear problems in water governance. Maybe first let me tell you that sometimes here in Europe we commit one sin. We tend to take certain things indeed very much for granted, and we always look at everything that we have still not achieved. But really, I believe in 2019 it is a little moment for congratulating ourselves for having put in place a piece of law which is called the Water Framework Directive. We agreed on it in 2000, it was the year 2000, and I must say now that we have just published today precisely today at noon, a press release on the fitness check, we can confidently say, by adopting that law almost 20 years ago, we have created indeed a governance framework for water in Europe, which is quite a unique model. It's a model that has enabled not only precisely the type of cooperation between the different actors that are in need for using water in a certain catchment area, but it has also enabled a very good cooperation between different member states and even third countries. The vast majority of our water bodies actually are in, I would say, cross-border areas. They require cooperation across member states and even with our neighbors. And all in all, what we have seen with the evaluation, thorough evaluation of this piece of law, is that this has worked, and it has worked well. So in reply to Cedric's concern, I would like to say, well, we are already now engaged with a lot of bilateral water dialogues with a number of countries, essentially at the request of these countries. One point in case most recently has been Brazil, with whom we've just started a very intense EU water dialogue. And I think that when you look at the entire logic of the Green Deal, it makes it a very strong point as to the fact that we would like, as much as possible, to set standards that make sense also for our planetary, I would say, planetary friends and companions in the adventure of getting these water challenges right. So there will be an effort carried out throughout this mandate from the European Union side to make sure that also our trade policy better reflects the kind of internal policy goal that we give to ourselves. So somehow this consistency should only improve. At the same time, as I said, of course, we also want to cooperate with governments that flag their interest to cooperate and put these high on top of their agenda. In reply to Gabriel, yes, I don't know, Fiona, do we want to interact or
I think Koen, if Koen's got something he would like to reply to,
yes,
let's
please
get
the debates part. Yes.
Just a very brief addition. My request is also about how can we mobilize knowledge from Europe to a country like Peru, and also finance. Right? So it's not only about trade policy is the European dimension, but I know that the European Union has a delegation in Lima, for example, in Peru. So how can we facilitate access to knowledge and access to finance for these countries to improve their capacity, their knowledge, but also their governance systems?
Yeah. We have several strands of action in this area, and I must say there are strands of action that we actually carried out together with the colleagues also of the United Nations. So there is a multiplicity of potential funding opportunity for building further capacity. And I'm very happy to give you more detail later on. It's not really my daily cup of tea, but just to tell you that we have capacity building programs with quite a lot of third countries already now. In the name of fight to pollution, for example, we've been cooperating a lot also with colleagues at UNICE level. So just to say, this is not necessarily the main issue, although funding is always an issue. But still, where the interest is clear, the geopolitical will to cooperate is there. I think there are plenty of modalities in place together also with the colleagues of the European Investment Bank, the World Bank, etc., to put together mechanics to help a certain country enhance its own capacity. I wanted to reply also to Gabriel that makes a very good point about data sharing and making sure that we have the right set of legislative regulatory tools there in place. This morning you listened to Daniel Callejo was presenting the 6 key political priorities of the Commission in the next 5 years mandate. And you will have noticed that one of those 6 super important political priorities is also making Europe fit for the digital age. You see that all these priorities actually interact with each other. So having a Europe that is fit for digital age also means a Europe where digitalization helps reaching the Green Deal goals. And I think data sharing is certainly very strongly in the heart of Europeans. At the same time, I think that we are entering a terrain where I'm very happy to enter in a conversation with you and with the people in the audience about data ownership, data governance. I think at the point in time where across the planet we are united in seeing that we need to get certain planetary challenges right all together, we would not like any disturbing influence of certain geopolitical powers, and we want Earth observation to be perfectly accurate, reliable, enabling us to have modeling methods that enable us to be sure that we can better prevent floods, that we can better anticipate water scarcity issues. So there, I'm very happy to also listen to the views of Microsoft about how can we secure that we really work in a sharing environment where we minimize cybersecurity threats, other security threats, and make sure that this is something that unites the globe towards something really reliable and accurate for all of us. In reply to Valeria, just to say that I'm very happy that you raised the point of how can we now spark also better reuse of water for industrial purposes. When we've tabled our proposal, the proposal for a regulation in Europe, the first ever regulation promoting the reuse of water for agricultural irrigation purposes, we did receive some questions as to why we had not from the outset thought of having it applying also to other sectors. And the very honest reply, which proved to be correct, has been that when we tabled this proposal, we felt that fortunately, unfortunately, state of minds, not everywhere in Europe there was the degree of maturity to recognize how much this water reuse is needed. And yet, the fact, the data that you see, today agriculture is the biggest consumer, the biggest sector in terms of consuming water, and the one where the need to take action against water scarcity was also the most acute one. So we decided to table a piece of law, which is a regulation, which means it's directly applicable the moment it will enter into force, which is going to come rather soon, because I'm happy to tell you we have struck a deal between the Council and the European Parliament, so this regulation will see the light very, very soon. The moment it will enter into force, it will directly apply to the economic operators, and here are basically the people that will have the pleasure of further filtering water coming from wastewater treatment and put it on the market available for agricultural purposes. Well, the moment this regulation comes into force, I think it will spark, again, we trust, we hope, technological innovation, a market game where we hope to see increased demand and supply, and the regulation is crafted in such a manner that it does allow taking stock a few years after its entry into application, whether across the member states we also see an uptake for industrial purposes. Should this happen, as we very much hope, because as you say, we already see as anecdotal experience that this is happening more and more, should this happen, I do not exclude that we may either legiferate further or basically largely use some of the parameters that we have now elaborated for water use for agricultural purposes, also for industrial purposes. Because again, when we speak about industrial processes, we know that one thing are the need of food industry that has to produce, that is reusing water for food purposes as opposed to other typologies of production. So, but just to say there is hope there as well, and I think we've done a very first important step, I hope, into the right direction.
Let me, Valeria, do you want to respond to Veronica in any way?
Exactly,
We'll
so the
back.
first step with the reuse in agriculture, that is ideal step, and this is exactly what is needed. And it will, I fully agree with you, generate more interest in that. So definitely there is no one recipe by the industry and by the regions to apply industrial reuse the same for everybody. That's why innovations here will be needed not only for the technology, but also for the strategy, procedures, how to apply that. But definitely it's a next step. And just a quick comment about this water museum that we had recently. So if you let me to dream about the future, I want to see in that water museum a bottle of wastewater that will become an artifact, not available anymore in future.
Maybe you'll be invited to the Water Museum next time. Gabrielle, we'll come back to you at the end, and I think that would lead nicely on.
So, well, maybe I stand up because I feel I'm a little bit figé, they say in French, by standing up. So I wanted to continue basically by replying to David. David, well, first of all, congratulations. I don't know what you think, but knowing that there are companies that are managing to turn big hotel sectors like Hilton into something that is a bit greener and sustainable, for me it's a source of hope because these are, again, very important giants on the market, and it's true, when we are in our hotel, we think about whether, you know, we are making sustainable use of the water at our disposal. You have raised a very useful question, very important question. Will we see more water efficiency higher in the agenda of the European Commission? And you have a very practical suggestion. Make sure it is in the Circular Economy Action Plan. I can assure you that we are working towards reaching this goal. When you will have the time, unless you have already done so, to read the communication, you will see that the Circular Economy Action Plan that we are thinking about will be looking at a number of sectors such as textiles, construction, and it's impossible to think of making construction sector more circular without thinking of energy efficiency and water efficiency. You said it yourself, it goes par hand in hand, and I think this is really very, very high on our agenda. I also see that we are reaching a stage of maturity in Europe where we do recognize, and it's one of the findings of our fitness check, that somehow the price of water is not the right one. Again, the directive that we adopted back in 2000, the Water Framework Directive, contains a very beautiful article. It's called the Article 9, which was already then saying it's important that we attach a right price to water just to stimulate an efficient use of water, and this price should be paid at least by industry, agriculture, and households. The reality is that we note, almost 20 years down the road, that first of all, the right price of water is not paid yet in many member states. There is a very discrepant ways of implementation of this article across the 28 member states, and also that certain actors are still not paying this price for water. And for me, the price of water is an important topic because I see it as a driver of better efficiency. I see it also as a driver of better water investments. Yes to zero leakage agenda. I want a zero leakage agenda, and I'm happy to see that also the co-legislators, in particular the European Parliament, is going into this direction by insisting on having certain provision on better monitoring and fight to leakages in the recast of the Drinking Water Directive. Together with my boss, Mr. Daniel Calleja, we will be holding the last, I hope, trialogues on this important modernization of the Drinking Water Directive next December the 18th in Strasbourg. And this is one of the points that continues to be under discussion. So it shows how much there is an appetite to go there. But to get there, you have to create finance channels that enable both public authorities, private actors, and municipalities to have an agenda which is credible for the general public and where the public really sees something is happening to make the use of water more efficient, more sustainable, secure that we have the right level of infrastructure, safe materials in contact with water. It's really a very encompassing agenda. So the zero pollution will be certainly there to help. The Green Deal announces a zero pollution action plan to be delivered by 2021. And in that context, of course, all the topics related to making sure that the quality of the water that we drink or that we use also for industrial and other purposes is the right one. So I hope you will be satisfied with the way we are going to incorporate your concerns. But I don't know whether you want to react as well. Any comments?
No, I don't save the energy you have to do that. So that's probably the comment I wanted to make. But no, I'm very happy to hear this. I think, you know, again, we have a great framework on which we can work. I think let's say all the agendas are pointing in the same direction. There's a, you know, wonderful event with a Green Deal coming in, and I think it's on us to make it implemented and actually drive something significant. And clearly, you know, industry, communities, I think we're all trying to get there, and so really looking forward to that.
Thank you very much. And I'm so glad. I also wanted to stress that we have Susan Gardner with us today. I think the United Nations and European Union will be working hand in hand also on the biodiversity strategy. Yes. You said it in your presentation how much it's important that we don't forget to protect our natural resources. We see from our fitness check and our analysis that our groundwaters, which are the main catchment areas for the water we drink, we should never forget, are in rather good status, but not in perfect status, and we are concerned when it comes to their quantity. So this is certainly something that is very, very much in our radar screen. And then last but in no way least, I wanted to go to Cedric, Nestlé, to thank you once again for the very promising project that you are carrying out. I think it's good, it's refreshing to see indeed industry going this way. And somehow I really got 2 points from your presentation. At some stage you were saying it's also so important that we become better in translating all the data, all the information that we have about water and their status into something that is easy to communicate and visualize with the general public. You cannot imagine how much this point is dear to me, because contrary to you, I don't have a very scientific background. I'm a poor lawyer. And one of my first requests to the colleagues has been precisely to try and work, something that we are now very actively doing with the colleagues of the European Environment Agency, to make sure that we are able to give to our citizens, I think, can't we go to real-time data delivery of information on the status of our rivers, of our groundwaters? We are almost gone there, basically, when it comes to air data. So if I want to know whether the air I'm breathing in the city is good or not, I can go to the European Environment Agency index, the air quality index, and we are marching towards making sure that we have a much better real data visualization of data also for our waters, and translated into indeed simplified information. This plays also an immense role when it comes to precision farming, for example, to help our farmers to understand how much they can do precise irrigation techniques. But you also said something that sounds really music to my ears. You said, let's find ways to put together cooperative platforms, I mean, ways to cooperate really. And here I have one question for the audience and for the speakers. Do you think we should create some sort of a big water platform for Europe where we pull together all the industry people, all the civic society people, all those stakeholders that want to accompany the European Commission in the next couple of years in the follow-up to the fitness check, in designing circular economy, water efficiency agenda, biodiversity agenda that really work for Europe, and how could we do it at best? So, rather for you.
That's certainly food for thought for us all. That's a big question. Cedric, I can see you wanted to say something. Do you want to say something quickly?
Maybe on your last point here, for sure it will be extremely difficult, but for the experience I have personally is that sharing this information and be part of the solution in the many places that we take as reference or a catchment, I feel that I'm not talking about here about the private sector only, but the dynamic that some of the actors and the stakeholders of a watershed can have together for their own benefit is much bigger than one could expect. And that putting, let's say, the terroir, so the territory or the platform to have something like this, which is catalyzing the process, I believe it's a very good idea, because there are so many goodwill to really cope with this situation that it would be a pity not to take advantage of this.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'd actually like to come back to Gabriel as well, so that he can comment. And I think there's been a thread the whole way through around better sharing, and I know that he's itching to say something.
Yes, thank you. Well, first, excellent point about building a platform that will basically enhance the cross-collaboration. And I think we need to understand what data sets we are referring to, and it goes to the heart of data ownership. So we have, for example, in many aspects, we have tons of data that is super precise, but is not well managed, or it's not, let's say, easy of use or easy to be exploited. In other areas, we are lacking of data. And I think what What the Commission can do in that aspect is to create, let's say, a platform, a common approach to, hey, we need data to get this type of insights. It's not only one vertical, in our view, that will sort the problem out. We can see the connection with water, but there are connections with other verticals. Water is a platform, but it also impacts other areas. That's why your idea of, why don't we create a stakeholder platform where we can have this discussion, it's important. Now, on data ownership, I think if we can bring examples from other industries, and there are many experts in other industries that can actually bring experiences. For example, healthcare. In healthcare, we have reached major breakthroughs in diagnosis, in treatment, and so on. And in most of the cases, it's driven by cross-collaboration between researchers, between scientists, utilizing the best technology that they have at their hand. If we are able to do that in this same phenomenon, well, the breakthroughs that we can get out from the data that we're collecting all over the place could dramatically change what the evolution of the current terms.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to all of you. Thank you, Veronica, for your really comprehensive perspective, which I certainly found very useful, and I'm sure everyone in the audience also enjoyed hearing, and response to each of the speakers. Just a note for the audience, in terms of Veronica's sort of big question around putting together a big water platform for Europe, if you want to post some responses through the Slido, please do, and those will all be captured, and it would be really, I think, useful for you, certainly, to be able to see those responses. So please do post them through the Q&A part of the Slido. And actually, just to wrap up the session, we're going to have a little competition. And so can I all ask you again to hold your phones and get back onto the Slido. And we are going to revisit the asks from each of our speakers. And I would like you all to vote on which ask you feel, or which call for action you feel is most important and will have the biggest impact going forward on the sustainable water management agenda. So taking into account each of the presentations that we heard and the perspective from Veronica, I would now just like you all to take some time and to vote and see what you feel is most important, and there will be a prize for the winner. So just to remind you, we've got Kuhn from Nature's Pride around developing better trade agreements, Gabrielle from Microsoft establishing appropriate legal frameworks for improved data sharing, Valeria at DuPont for recognizing the importance of water reuse for industry, David at Ecolab addressing energy performance within EU water legislation, and Cedric at Nestlé around supporting collaborative action to find better solutions. So there we are. Keep the votes coming in. So at the moment we have leading the charge, supporting collaborative action to find better solutions. So that's Cedric. That will be, at the moment, the prize looks as though it's going to you. Come on, everyone. There's more of you in the room that need to vote. There's a prize at stake. Okay. So 5 more seconds for a few final votes. Okay. I think I'll draw it to a close. I would actually like to invite to the stage Dirk Kroll from Water Europe so that he can present the prize. We have a prize here for you to give. So the moment with the winner, definitely, is supporting collaborative action to find better solutions. So that goes to Cedric Giga at Nestlé. Well done, Cedric. Here's the...
Thank you.
That use.
Chocolates.
Yeah, that's great. Is there anything you want to say? Put you on the spot, 2 words.
Yes, totally unexpected. Thank you very much. I still want to say that, yeah, working together and, again, tackling and being engaged with the local stakeholders, so many good ideas are coming from the ground and from the reality in the field that, yeah, I'm very happy to have this opportunity, but I really believe that this is a big part of the solution.
Lovely. Thank you, Cedric. I think that's a great outcome. And for sure, there was the theme of collaboration running through all of these presentations. So please can I thank all of our speakers. That was great fun, lovely interactive session. And yeah, a round of applause for all of you. Back to Piers.
So as we move to session 3, hello, yes, I'm on. So as we move to session 3, I loved that last slide. Someone should have told Donald Trump. Did you spot that the last one, the lowest voted one, was better trade agreements? Someone should tell him. And it's interesting that you've got 2 moderators, both English, and in the UK today there is the general election, and I'm pleased to say that so far nobody's mentioned it to me yet. Fingers crossed that the UK will not go galloping out of Europe today. Now, we come to session 3. Session 3 is about, well, what are the opportunities? What is the opportunities that come from all of this for innovation? This session has been created in partnership with Euro, so I'd like to acknowledge that. And I'd like to ask our 4 speakers to come and join me on the stage. Now, it's obvious I'm English from my accent, and I have struggled with some of the names today, as you may have picked up, and I'm going to have a little go now. So we have, our speakers are Javier Delgado. Near enough? Good enough, thank you. That look on his face said no. Javier Delgado, if you'd like to take that would be good. I'd also like to bring up Luis Salvatea. Marvelous, thank you. Bernard Gavlik and Norbert Kreutzinger. Marvelous, we now have our speakers on the stage. We're a little behind on time, so I'm not going to take up any more time. If you're ready to go, we're ready to hear you. Floor's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Piers. Well, as it says, I work for Canal de Salud Segunda, but today I'm representing Euro as a member of its joint working group for innovation. So I should start by describing what is Euro. Euro is the European Federation of Water Services, and it represents 32 national associations of drinking and wastewater operators across 29 European countries, both in the public and in the private sector. And what we do, okay, we have a network of experts coming throughout these 29 countries, and we face the water sector challenges, and with a deep knowledge of these experts, we arrive to consensus and then establish a common position of all our associates that helps engage us with EU policymakers. To set out the context of what I'm explaining, let me quote a couple of texts. Firstly, from the Water Framework Directive from year 2000, water is not a commercial product like any other, but rather a heritage which must be protected, defended, and treated as such. Thus, in my own words, we must preserve water for the upcoming generations in order to allow them to access to a resource in the appropriate quantity and quality. And secondly, the second text from Article 191.2 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. It's about the environment and thus about water. it says that the Union policy on the environment shall be based on the precautionary principle and on the principles that preventive action should be taken, that environmental damage should, as a priority, be rectified at source, and that the polluter should pay. This is the 3 points in my presentation, and in my own words, do not take actions whose consequences on the environment you ignore. Secondly, rather than removing pollution from the environment, first avoid polluting it. And third, those who damage the environment should be liable for it. So how does this match with the way we currently do innovation? In the water sector, we do innovate a lot in improving, especially in the, well, I'm speaking about the water quality issues, in the quality of drinking and wastewater, in minimizing the impact of combined sewers overflow and wastewater in the water bodies, and in recovering resources and in, implementing the circular economy paradigm. But you can see in this picture that there are many actors that intervene in water quality that I haven't mentioned. In some way, we feel like, okay, there's pollution in water, and they tell the water business, oh, that's your business, do deal with it. We don't have anything to do with that. And well, anyway, this way of doing things is not completely bad. We shall continue to do it in the future. But we missed something. All in all, we are very good at reacting to the changes that take place in the environment. But there are undesirable consequences of this scenario because we continuously add more and more steps in the treatment processes, steps that consume more energy, that increase the carbon footprint, that increase the price. And remember, this increase in price is being paid by our customers, not by the polluter. Additionally, the existence of pollutants in the water cycle prevents us from getting closer to a real circular economy. So what should we do? We should look at the broader picture, engage with the other stakeholders. I think the previous debate has been really has been pointing to the same thing, and I'm very glad that the example by Nestlé was the winner. I did vote for it, by the way. So we should engage with all the stakeholders in order to apply all the principles I stated at the beginning. So we should innovate in improving forestry management for a reduction of soil erosion and a better rain management. We should improve the way we prevent pollutants from reaching groundwater. We should try to reduce also contaminants from roads, from tie road wear particles. We should also improve the quality of the sludge in order to be able to reuse it much better. It is important too to control and improve the runoff from our cities to prevent pollutants to reach the wastewater treatment plants. Something very, very important related to farming, there must be an improvement in fertilizers in such a way that they are not leached by water, and thus they will be more effective and they won't pollute the water bodies. And finally, wastewater treatment in industries and in hospitals too should be improved in such a way that the effluent is completely free of pollutants. So a few highlights just to finish. I think I wasn't synchronized with the presentation, I'm sorry. As a result, innovation should concentrate at developing solutions in the farming and in the industry sector in order to prevent pollutants to reach the water bodies, as I said, even though in the water sector we will continue to innovate in detection and removal of pollutants. It's unavoidable. We should also invest in making a better use of water in the whole water cycle, use less water, produce less wastewater in such a way that nutrients in wastewater are more concentrated and they can be more easily recovered and reused. We should also focus on having cleaner wastewater. Let's say the ideal would be that we have only the nutrients we want to recover and water, so we can separate them at the wastewater treatment plant, and that would be ideal. It would be easier to reclaim that water, and it is easier to reuse the nutrients and to reuse the sludge. And last but not least, there must be also innovation in the financial side. On the one hand, to implement this principle of the polluter pays, and also because there are a lot of new businesses that can be developed around the circular economy. So to sum up, even though in the water sector we will continue to actively innovate within the restricted to the very water cycle, this innovation must also take place by involving all the stakeholders, by collaborating with them in such a way that we make, in the end, water services more sustainable, circular, and affordable. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you like to swap places with Luis? Is that?
Good afternoon. I'm Luis Salvadella. I'm a full professor of organic chemistry in the University of Zaragoza, as well as a researcher at the ISQCH, a joint institute of the University of Zaragoza and the Superior Council of Scientific Investigations. In this talk, I want to call your attention to an underrated threat to fresh water, namely the pollution coming from POP's landfills. I will also show that upcycling pure HCH waste is a good method to fight against such a risk. Linane was produced as an insecticide for more than 50 years in many production plants around the world. However, linane production was very inefficient. Thus, production of 1 kilo of linane generated about 10 kilos of hexachlorocyclohexane, which is usually abbreviated as HCH. HCH is toxic for humans and other animals, mostly for aquatic organisms. HCH is considered as a probable human carcinogen and can affect the immune system. As a consequence, HCH is classified as a persistent organic pollutant, abbreviated as POP. HCH releases are banned by the Stockholm Convention, which has been implemented by European regulation. HCH was stockpiled as a waste close to the linane production plants. As a result, HCH stockpiles are located around the world in industrial countries, mostly the European Union. About 2 megatons of HCH stockpiles are known, and about between 2 and 5 megatons of additional HCH stockpiles are suspected. Most HCH stockpiles were landfill. However, buried liquid waste containing metallic barrels, rust, and liberate contents in the underground. Solid and liquid waste, along with physical and chemical agents such as light, water, air, or time, generates a dangerous mixture of organochlorinated compounds named as dense non-aqueous phase liquid, abbreviated as DNAPL. DNAPL plumes migrate slowly by gravity and diffusion through the underground and can reach the rivers. Because of its high density and viscosity, DNAPL extraction is very difficult. We can see here the case of Sabiñánigo, a village placed on the Pyrenees 100 kilometers from here. In Sabiñánigo, there are 2 landfills containing HCH waste, which are named as Sardas and Bailín. These landfills are very near to the Gallego River, which flows into the Ebro River in Zaragoza, 5 kilometers from here. In 1989, the HCH levels in the Gallego River exceeded the admissible pollution levels in the European Union. Since then, several actions have been taken against DNAPL by the governments of Aragon. However, 150,000 tons of solid HCH waste still remain in these landfills. Evidently, the best way to avoid future HCH releases consists on the design of methods to carry out the elimination of HCH through chemical methods. In our research group, we are working on safe, inexpensive methods to upcycle HCH, that is, in the transformation of more inert compounds. The usual method to eliminate HCH consists on the use of sodium hydroxide to transformate HCH in a mixture of trichlorobenzenes. However, trichlorobenzenes are dangerous organochlorine compounds. In our research group, we are working on the transformation of trichlorobenzenes in benzene through the use of hydrogen gas. However, hydrogen gas is a very dangerous compound, as we can see in the picture about the Hindenburg disaster. In a reaction we are working in, we use isopropanol as a hydrogen precursor, which is transformed in acetone. In this reaction, sodium chloride is also obtained as an inert byproduct. Anyway, further research is required in order to scale up such a reaction in the most convenient way for the transformation of 150,000 tons, which are still remaining in the Sabiñánigo sites. Finally, I would like to thank the funds and people which are participating in this project. Thank you for your attention.
A second. Thank you, Louis. I was slightly worried there that story started badly and a terrifying story. I'd never heard of the stockpiles, and to know they're so close. We'll come back to that. Bernard, all yours.
Thank you very much indeed. Nothing is as dangerous as a scientist with a PowerPoint presentation in a conference like this. I hear this sentence very often. I think Veronica before, she also has my full sympathy when we are coming from the Science Service of the European Commission with our findings, very proud on what we fumbled in our laboratories, and then we are simply confronted to explain this to the ordinary person, the man and woman in the street, children, citizens, politicians, and we fail to do so. And this is a reason why we have maybe, when we are talking about innovation, also to think about non-technological innovation in the way we are doing science. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we are doing, teaming up, Susan Gardner mentioned it this morning, with UNEP, and addressing the topic of water quality. Now, let me start from a quote from Franz Timmermans, who said that the climate change crisis is a water crisis. And let me add, it's a water quality crisis. A water quality crisis which has been invisible and unknown. And this is the reason why the World Bank came out this year with a very interesting report on the water quality. Quality unknown, the hidden water crisis. Richard Demania, he presented it in the meeting we organized with the World Water Quality Alliance in September in Ispra. And one slide, one quote struck me a lot, because he gave a price tag to something we avoid to give a price tag to. He actually was asking, can we quantify the global economic cost of water pollution? And the finding of the World Bank said actually when the biological oxygen demand, so overall water quality we are using also in the SDG assessment, exceeds 8 milligram per liter, the gross domestic product growth declines by 1/3. Independently of all the socio-economic things, this is money you are losing in business. Now, some other figures. 80% of the Europeans don't trust drinking water outside their country. 44% of the agricultural irrigation demand could be covered by reusing the total volume of treated wastewater in Europe. And actually, we have an overall volume of 6.6 billion cubic meters of water per year of potential reuse. These are figures which have been presented with the impact assessment of the forthcoming water reuse regulation, where we teamed up with DG Environment to formulate it. The reality, however, in the public is a different one compared to these water problems. The perception is that water reuse per se is already dangerous. Our biggest current water quality problems in Europe is called microplastics. And research says actually there are a lot of doubts and uncertainties, and we need actually more research, more chemicals to be investigated, and so forth. Truth is, water reuse is a safe practice if rules are followed and if control is established. And the primary risks are actually of biological nature. So we see a big mismatch between perception and reality. Now, we are not the only ones having this problem. This is Jan Lu, the science director of UNIT. He came to the JOC in the summer and he asked us literally, can you put the world in my hand? Because I need to do something about that. I need to move from data to action. Oh, okay, great, big challenge, planet, piece of cake. So we started actually to work with the colleagues in Nairobi, Hartwig Kremer and I, we sat together a long time and had a lot of Skype conferences. How can we actually do some innovation here? And how can this innovation on science also become a water quality and diplomacy platform so that the actors in conflict, the citizen, private, public stakeholder, and the financial sector and research and academia actually start to think about solutions. So we need a rethinking the way we are doing water science. And this rethinking actually starts in our world itself. We wanted actually to start in building on the Earth observation services we have. We have excellent Earth observation skills. We have Copernicus, we have Galileo in place. We know a lot about land use, not only in Europe, but all over the planet. UNEP is using, for instance, the Global Surface Water Explorer as a reference, as a de facto reference map. We know a lot in terms of environmental modeling on what's going on. And we know a lot about in situ measurements. I saw here some colleagues here, Werner Brack from UFZ is here, compounds of emerging concern. I think Norbert, you're also working on that topic. A lot of chemicals are coming up, and it seems that the pollution is growing. As a matter of fact, it's not, it's just the number of chemicals we see which is growing. The concentrations overall tend to go down. So somehow in this innovation we are missing something. No, we have these science fields and there are silos. They don't talk to each other. I'm a lab guy, I don't talk to the guy doing monitoring. Who does not talk to the guy who has my land images? So actually we were thinking, and let's bring in a fourth actor, citizen science, and see how we can, not in a big project, but in a bottom-up experience, unite the community to rethink this water innovation. And the result was actually the creation first of an assessment under UN SDG 6.3.2 on water quality, which gave birth to a water quality alliance, teaming up across Africa, across Latin America, across Europe to tackle the global water crisis. Now, this cannot happen if we continue to talk water only about water sectorial perspectives. We have seen a lot of presentations, I think as well also yesterday. We have to come out of our comfort zone. I cannot solve the problem of diffuse pollution from agriculture if I don't speak with the agricultural sector. I cannot tackle the issue of energy demand for desalination if I don't speak with the energy sector. So this nexus thinking, water, energy, food, and ultimately the free of charge ecosystem services we are using have to be brought on a table. But they have to be brought on a table not in international conferences. They have to be brought on a table on a local perspective. Sitting in an office in Brussels, I cannot recommend a Spanish farmer how to irrigate his or her tomatoes. I need to have an understanding of what's happening in the area there. I have to have an understanding about the energy structure and about the local conditions of living, and also the cultural acceptance. So this is a little bit what with the Water Quality Alliance we started to do. You are all invited to team up. I think the colleagues in Nairobi, they are waiting eagerly that European private sector is entering as well, and I'm ready to engage with you here. Thank you very much indeed for your attention.
Norbert. No, stay there, stay there. And if you go to the end one.
Well, thank you very much, and I will a bit follow up on what Bernd just mentioned. In my regard, I'm speaking about the pollution challenges as opportunity for innovation, and the head on my top that you don't see right now is today I'm with you as a member or representative of the joint program initiative on water, and especially on the knowledge hub on contaminants of emerging concern. Basically, what are knowledge hubs? So knowledge hubs directly address an aspect that Bernd mentioned. So we have to communicate with the stakeholders. We have to transfer knowledge, scientific knowledge, to the people that really have finally to support politics in really setting up solutions, in really supporting solutions, and finally to pay for those solutions. So there is a big gap between scientific knowledge and public acceptance. You remember the guy with the yellow no on it. And that's what we try to do in the Knowledge Hub. So we really try to follow a bottom-up approach. So we ask the members of the Knowledge Hub, what are the concerns that need to be addressed, and how could we really transfer or do communication from science to policy, from science to society. In that regard, we actually focus, or our Knowledge Hub focus on contaminants of emerging concerns. So they were mentioned several times. And we focus on the production or producing some layman's reports, policy briefs that are easily understandable, and where we communicate information even for the society, for the broader society, not necessarily for the experts. So we don't have to discuss here in that round with you what is the importance of the contaminants of emerging concern, but we really have to raise the awareness of the people, of society out there, that we have a quality issue. And the most recent document that will be disseminated then beginning of next year is really such an awareness-raising document on the importance of the CECs in the anthroposphere. And that's the story we tell about the CECs. And I want to start looking a bit back, and it was already mentioned, we are speaking about problems, but we don't speak about success, and we can, I think, can follow up in future on the success story that we had during the last 30, 40 years. And some of us still know, so I can remember a problem, a situation in our rivers that was really very bad in the 60s when we had foam, no oxygen in the rivers, but finally we were able to address that problem. We constructed the wastewater treatment plants that overcome that problem, and basically this is the start of a success story that continued afterwards with eutrophication, with ammonia toxicity in our rivers. This was the challenge. Then we built the corresponding wastewater treatment plants, implementing nitrification, phosphorus precipitation, and basically nowadays we have solved that problem. And when we go back to the previous slide, actually, you see this wastewater treatment plant 2.0 or 2 dot. And then we had a 3 dot, and nowadays we have 3.5 or 3.5 with wastewater treatment plants that implement denitrification, enhanced phosphorus removal, and because a lot was spoken about energy efficiency and so on, those treatment plants nowadays, they can operate on a energy self-sustaining mode. So they generate as much energy in the mean over the year as they consume. So this is possible today, and this is a big success story, and that should be told. Not only mention that that amount of energy is used for wastewater treatment, it's 2 watt per person compared to 2,000 watt every one of us consumes per whatever time unit you have. So this is a success story that we followed up during the last years, and we have that success today, but we are living in another world too, and this is the other side, and that's where we have to fetch up with the discussion and the solutions nowadays. So I like that graph very much, that it's published on the webpage of CAS from the Chemical Abstract Services in the US, and they every year follow up on that graph, adding the amount of registered chemicals in their database. And this graph is a very nice surrogate for showing that the society, our society, continued to develop the last decades, starting when we implemented the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive in 1991, then over the time of 2000, where we implemented the Water Framework Directive, and nowadays we have a bunch of more chemicals in the database that, of course, not are all in the environment and not all are in the rivers, but nevertheless, this graph demonstrates the change in the society, the development in our livelihood, in our goods that we use on daily basis. And when we heard this morning that every year 150 or 140 million of people increase their society status, that they can afford other new things that previously were not affordable, that means basically that that is the challenge we have to treat with. So we have to ask ourselves the question, are the solutions we have nowadays fit for purpose to address organic trace pollutants, microplastics, antibiotic resistance, just to name the most important contaminants of emerging concern? And when we, for example, compare the potential in wastewater reusal, wastewater treatment based on the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive in regard to non-eutrophication sensitive, eutrophication sensitive areas, we see that our old treatment plants, as we have them nowadays, basically can deal with some of those compounds, but we have a lot of compounds that we don't deal at all. And when we look, for example, on the diclofenac, this is a compound that we don't get rid of with our 3.5 technologies, so we would have to implement new ones that are able to solve or to remove those compounds. Of course, this is very difficult to communicate to the people out there, so we need an easy way to do that, and one that we consider as really suitable is to communicate with the reduction of the estrogenic effects. So everyone knows about hormones, about the anti-baby pills, so we can say when we implement those advanced technologies, we are actually able to remove those hormone effects down to zero. We don't observe an effect in the effluent of wastewater treatment plant. And that brings us to the costs. And I like very much from the economists this Big Mac index. Unfortunately, it's not too sharp, but basically it's an index about the costs of Big Mac in different countries. And so you can roughly convert the costs here. And speaking about costs, it's 3 to 5 Big Macs or packs of cigarettes or bottles of beer. When you prefer the wine, it's a bit less, but the wine is more expensive. So I don't want to answer the question if this is expensive or if we really can afford it. I leave the answer up to you. So bottom line, finalizing, the treatment plants we have now implemented aren't that bad, but they are based on technologies requirement that came up in the 1980s. We are living in a different society, we are living in a different world today, and we have really to ask whether those solutions are still fit for purpose, as we have a bunch of new substances. And when we look at transitional and reinvestment periods that are longer than 20 years, actually we would have to start to do something now. Otherwise, we are losing another 20, 30 years, and the question is if we can afford that from the environmental protection point of view. Solutions criteria are available, they are there, so we could start immediately. And further on, when we don't have legal requirements in that regard, actually we won't have really action that takes in. And these requirements basically would drive new innovations for more sustainable, better solution, more energy efficient solutions to meet those new requirements. And with that, I'm finished, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Norbert. I'm going to stay here, I think, to do the... No, oh, no, that's right. I need to move, don't I? Otherwise, I'm going anywhere to go. I'll move my way. No. I should have planned that. So, thank you very much. We're running a little behind time, but I think we've got time for a couple of questions. So what I think I heard there was the description of the polluter pays principle from Javier. Brilliant. It seems to make sense. And then... Luis, you described a great example of exactly that, of how innovation is being focused on a specific problem with the HCHs. We then came to Bernard talking through the challenges of public perception, is what I think I took from that, and how we can move to a more holistic approach to address these problems and not work in silos. I like that sectorial bit. And then finally, Norbert, you brought us back to saying, well, actually, conventional treatment. And the story I took actually from that was that as we moved from the 70s to today, the improvements have been driven by innovations which have been brought out by the challenges that we face. So nice set of innovations being driven by some of the pollution challenges that we have before us. Looking at what we've got on Slido, I've got one question here which I'm going to take to you, Javier, around what about the problem of water pollution caused by slurry? We haven't talked about it at all today, slurry. Sewage sludges, agricultural sludges that get spread on land, the water that's embedded in those.
Well, I mentioned one of the sources of pollution by farming, which was fertilizers, but there are many others. You have this one, you have also pesticides. I think it's all the same thing. If those means of doing farming are highly pollutant, we should find either for the pesticides or for the fertilizer something that doesn't pollute, or when it's a residue, I think we should innovate in transforming that residue into some kind of resource. And
valuable resource. The circular economy is
never throwing it away and let it pollute the soil or the groundwater or the rivers or whatever. First, try to make something good out of it, and if you are not capable of that, at least put it in a safe place or do something with it, or that deactivates the pollution it might cause to the environment.
I've got it. Okay, thank you. I think we'd all resonate with that. Because we're short on time, what I'm going to do is ask the same question to the three of you, but I want you to think of something which you believe we should have done with hindsight. If, knowing what we know today, what would we have done differently 10 years ago? Can you think of something we would have done differently if we knew what we knew today around the pollution challenges? Norbert, you're looking me straight in the eye with a look of hatred, so I'm going to go straight to you first.
Well, I think we should start now. So there always is a discussion, yeah, how does the technology behave with that chemical, with that? Yep. So when we continue that discussion, nothing will happen within the next 20 years. So we should really be fond of starting somewhere, doing the first step, and of course we have the next opportunity in 20 years. So I was speaking about wastewater treatment 3.9, but 4 or 4.0 would be resource recovery. So, and for that we may need a bit more time. So let's start immediately something that we can do, what is affordable, and knowing that this is not the end of the road. It's just the start.
So thinking broader about the platform of chemicals you've got to treat, rather than picking off individual problems.
Yeah, and allow some gaps in your thinking and the argumentation. So we never can ever solve all the problems that we identified now, but we have to start solving at least some of them that we are aware of.
Got it. Louis, tell me something that you'd do in hindsight.
Well, I've talked about a particular case of contamination from HCH, which come from POPs landfills. Well, the issue is not a present issue because this the production of linden is now banned. Not exactly in all the world, but in most countries in the world. Problem is just a historical issue because some years ago, some decades ago, industrial practices were not very sensitive to the environment. So that these practices would be not applicable nowadays. So I think current industry has learned a lesson on the importance of the preservation of the environment. But anyway, we have currently a historical issue due to the POPs landfills, which are still waiting for a solution. So we need to find a solution for the destruction of millions of tons of HCH, which are still waiting us. So please don't forget HCH on the water management.
Got it. Thank you. And finally.
Thank you. Well, three points came to my mind when I heard your question. Rethink science. Science is not anymore for universities and scientists alone. Do science with citizens and then they understand and engage and they tell you the problems they want to be solved, not what you think. Secondly, reuse. We don't need to use drinking water to flush a toilet. We all agree on this. It's not a problem of knowledge. Reuse water. There's only one water. I was very sad to see the discussion about the mission statements in Horizon Europe, where we talk about coastal water, ocean water, groundwater, surface water, what have you. But the water is only one. And last but not least, Renaissance. We can learn a lot from the Renaissance period, where we can actually use the local levels, our local research infrastructures as diplomatic currencies in a water conflict if we coordinate them from a supranational level. I'm sorry to say, as European Commission staff member, but one of the problems we face is very much that nation-wise we continue to manage our water as a property of the state, and water as a property of the people. So give it back to the people and engage with them locally. Thank you.
Brilliant. What a great way to finish this session. Well, thank you very much. Please, if you could take your seats. Thank you. That was brilliant. Now, I'm deliberately coming to the front because they're going to be moving some chairs and seats behind me as I introduce the last session before we break for coffee. Now, we're going to do something slightly different here. We're going to run what's called an Oxford-style debate. And I've got 4 very brave individuals who have volunteered to step forward and argue a case. And we've given them an argument to defend. So it's not that they're coming up and necessarily presenting their own personal views. They are going to argue one side of a story, and the one side of an argument. And the argument, because I'm going to ask you to vote on it, is that this House believes that technical innovation will be the main engine to solve our pollution challenges. This House believes that technical innovation will be the main engine to solve the pollution challenges. I'd like you all to flick to Slido and consider that thought and just decide, do you believe it? Are you on the for side or are you on the against side? And there's a reason why I want to do this, is because we're going to hear some arguments. Now that the tables are up, if my 4 volunteers could kindly come up and take their seats. I think if we could put the Slido chart on the board, we'll be able to see how people have voted. Because over the next 15, 20 minutes or so, we're going to hear some arguments. Now, in this room, I'm going to take a wild guess that most of us have innovation in our hearts. Most of us have innovation in the center of us. We believe that technical innovation is something that's going to power us forward. But you know what? Not everybody in the world thinks that. And sometimes it's incredibly useful for us to hear and think through the arguments that are against why technical innovation might be useful, because that will help us be better and more effective in our work, be that in designing policy or in actually developing up innovations ourselves. So Fiona's come back on the stage and she's going to work on the side for the for, and I'm going to be on the side for the against, although we're obviously completely impartial moderators. And most of the debates will come from our 4 esteemed panelists. I think we're ready to go. Everyone's got microphones and such like. So, Fiona, would you like to introduce your panelists, please?
Yes. So I have Christian from Warwick in Italy, and I have... I'm having a complete blank. Yeah, Martin, thank you. I've even got it behind.
The clue's behind. It's amazing, isn't it? This is what happens when you drink at lunchtime.
Martin, I'm sorry. So anyway, Martin from Wetsus, and they are both going to be arguing for the motion, and I shall be encouraging them, and we are going to have a really good debate here, and the enemy are on the other side of the stage, and I'll leave Piers to do a better job of introducing
Well, at least I will know the names of my panelists. We have Frank Rogala and we have Thomas van Gilst. And actually, the way to think about this is we have here an operator and here a financier, an investor, an operator and a financier. Over there, we have a regulator and a researcher. Would that be a fair description of you? So we have a researcher, a regulator, a financier, and an operator. They have all been asked specifically to argue their case. And at the end of the panel, at the end of this debate, we'll actually let each of them stand up and say what their honest opinion is, just in case we discover that they've argued wildly against where their heart lies. But before we get to the debate, let's just see how the audience has voted. Are we able to put up the graph?
So yes, if you could pop Slido back up. Excellent. And everyone get out your phones or your devices and let us see where your allegiance lies. The for, which I would encourage strongly, or the enemy sitting on the other side of the stage.
Well, it's looking nicely balanced here. Bearing in mind there is a general election going on in the UK, I hope it is this vibrant and exciting. So we've got 53 people. It's not looking good for us on the against side. You're going to have to work hard to be persuasive over here.
Come on, the fours. We need more than 58%. Can I see anyone that isn't voting that would like to cast
We'll
their
keep
vote?
that going until we get just over 100 people, and then I think we'll pause. Okay, so we can see that as we're starting, we've got clearly an audience here who believe that innovation is the main engine, technical innovation is the main engine that will drive improvements in addressing pollution challenges. There's one more thing I was meant to say. Oh, it's how the panel's going to work. So what's going to happen is there's going to be 5 minutes of debate from the for side, and then a counter debate of 5 minutes of arguments from the against side. Then you, as the audience, will have a chance to revisit your vote, and we'll see whether those numbers have shifted at all. Then there's going to be a second round of debate with 3 minutes and 3 minutes. And again, you get a chance to see if you've been persuaded. And I urge you to listen to the arguments. Listen, are you persuaded by the arguments? Has something been brought up that you hadn't considered before? And then finally, there'll be one last round of 1 minute and 1 minute for each side to counter the arguments that have been presented again. And then we will have the final vote. And so what we're looking to issue at the end is to see whether we can shift from 58-42 by the end. With no further ado, I'm going to hand over to the for side to present their first 5-minute argument, and you can see the timer at the back.
Okay, thank you. So, first of all, I don't know what they are going to say, but generally, you know, why are we here? We are here for innovation. This whole conference doesn't make sense if there is no technical innovation, so we can all go home. You know, there is nothing new to share in any conference, so basically there's no networking anymore, and probably Frank is going to say at these boring conferences, hey, I built another plant, the same one as last time. What do you think about that, Christian?
Yes, Martin, you're totally right. I mean, we're all educated people here, and there is a strong link between education and innovation. We wouldn't be here seated comfortably listening and arguing with logical arguments without being very well equipped from our higher education, which, by the way, has been developing throughout years through technical innovation that has been crucial.
Yeah, and also without technical innovation, we're just stuck in time. You know, we are like the Amish. You know, which year is it? Then this year, you know, there's no innovation anymore. This is the crucial year. Everything stops. Or, you know, what do we have? We are working with stone hammers. Is that what you guys want? I don't know. Is it, you know, you want to go to the Middle Ages? You want to go outside and defecate on the street? Is that your argument? Do you wait for the rain to fall to flush it away? Come on, we can do better than that, right? Come on, innovation is important for these kind of things. What do you think, Christian?
Well, Martin, there's one other big argument in favor that I'm sure everybody would agree on. It's that human life would not be adequately protected against the external environment, natural disasters, infectious diseases, and without technical innovation, we would not live for sure as long as we are living right now.
And also, one of the important things which we heard a lot in previous session, we want to go to a circular economy. At the moment, we have a linear economy. So we need innovations to go to a circular economy. You know, you cannot certainly throw money at it, or just by saying that you want to do it, you don't solve it. You know, it cannot be done by regulation. It cannot be done by financing. It has to be done by new innovation in the end to create this exciting new technologies that we can recover these resources and reuse them again. And this is how we want the future to look like, right?
Perfectly. That perfectly fits also with another suggestion from the general economy, that technical innovation typically generates economic wealth. If you consider production costs or value of outputs, technological innovation is crucial to that. And not only does technical innovation increases the size of the market, as you all know. For instance, think of the IT industry and the spread of the internet, which broadened the capability of companies to increase their offer of goods by selling to new markets. But also technical innovation allows companies to increase their productivity by substituting human work, for instance, by machine works, hence increasing volumes of outputs. And last but not least, innovation increases the efficiency of production by reducing average costs and generating gains that can be transferred to stakeholders, for instance, in terms of profits through dividends, or to customers, final customers, in terms of decrease of final prices of goods and better quality of services.
And also, I think one important point is, without innovation, we would do stupid things. You know, we want to do smarter things. How can we be smarter? And one of the things, at least, where we need to be smarter, if you look at phosphate. If you want to recover phosphate at a lower concentration, and you want to do it with the same technology, no innovation, and you want to, for instance, decrease it by a factor of 2, then you have to maybe increase your wastewater treatment plant by a factor of 10. You have to pour a lot of concrete. You should actually think what kind of other technologies are available. Maybe it's not the current technologies which are developed at the moment, but it should be a completely different system. You have to redesign completely a new wastewater treatment plant and think, okay, where at which moment shall we implement which technology? Which is on the technological side, but also from the planning side. We need to interact with each other. We need to figure out where do we want to do something. Will that be by just this technical innovation just on a plant? Will it also be by social innovation, by others at least? In the end, they're all combined. And this technical innovation, I think, is really the key, at least, to make this happen. I think that's the most important aspect.
Lovely.
And with that, I'm going to draw you to a close. Perfect timing. You did your 5 minutes. Let's jump straight over to the against. Set the clock again.
Hard act to follow.
Well, we can start, I guess, without the clock, so we gain a few seconds.
The clock started.
Of course, innovation is a desirable activity, but what is the question here? That technical innovation will solve the global pollution challenge, which is urgent, which is very important, and needs immediate solutions. Innovation, as a definition, is making something different with new ideas, with new products. Well, a new method is unproven. It means a huge risk. It means uncertainty. It means cost without guaranteed outcome. That's not what we can afford to solve this immediate global issue. Now that we are here in Aragon, it actually comes to mind that we have 500 years ago, we had Ferdinand II, the King of Aragon, who financed one of the first discoverers, Columbus, that I will take as an example for an innovator. Well, he left Cadiz without knowing where he was going. He arrived in Santo Domingo, he didn't know where he was. He came back, he didn't have a clue where he had been, and all that with government money. So that, of course, doesn't even mention that he lost one ship, Santa Maria, his main ship. He actually lost 9 ships in the 4 trips that he did, and he caused havoc among the natives that he was visiting in Cuba or Haiti. Thousands, millions died after his visit. So that, for me, is an example of failed innovation without clear target, without collaboration. And I think that's where we have to focus.
Okay, so fast forward another couple of 100 years, and we're in the period of industrialization. With the rapid industrialization of humankind, our lives have become more comfortable, our longevity has increased. But industrialization is also the main cause of the levels of pollution that we see today all over the world. Habitats and species are disappearing from the face of the earth at the fastest rate ever. Innovation often comes with unintended side effects, and has indeed brought us in this bitter place where we are today. And this house is proposing that the same poison can solve these problems, can heal the patient. Innovation has been the spark that started industrialization and a shift towards an unsustainable consumer society with its giga environmental footprint. At most, innovation will slow down how fast we're getting ourselves into more trouble. The rate of decline of natural habitats and the irreversible disappearance of animals and plant species is happening already. Let us face it. How many of us in this room really think that we're on the cusp of finding a solution that will address these problems?
Yeah, that's like in the Second World War. In the last year of the war, the German population were promised a Wunderwaffe, a miracle weapon to fight against this overarching enemy. And of course, on the contrary, we have, if we are in a very serious battle, to work on a very specific battle plan, not just invent some vague solution, out of which 1 in 10 maybe will give us an exit plan, and out of which we need 10 years to go from pilot to demo scale. So we need to focus our resources in a structured way to solve a very specific problem.
So let us not lose sight that supporting innovation costs money, and the allocation of public money, which is usually behind innovation, also costs money and minds. According to Harvard Business School, 92% of startups fail and 95% of product innovations fail. I dare to say that in the environmental sector, the failure rate is even higher. To borrow Boris Johnson's, here it comes, Boris Johnson's line, whilst we dither and delay, the environmental problem is immediate and urgent, with many effects irreversible. In fact, a large part of the world's pollution problems could already be solved today. Plenty of technologies and policy examples already exist to protect or treat water and wastewater to very high standards. I think it's been said many times before today. There's a plethora of fancy ideas to improve certain processes, but let us be realistic, the majority will only bring incremental improvements. We can already today achieve our targets simply by identifying and replacing or replicating best examples of technologies, policies, lifestyles, and we must not pass the ball on to the next generation. What is really needed is political drive to tackle the problems universally, to educate, to convince people across the board to be the agents of change. We also need the drive to enforce the policies and the laws to be adhered to. So this sounds banal, but we have some fundamental issues about jurisdictions not willing to tax or to fine polluting industries for the sake of employment.
I'm going to stop you there because you've got some extra seconds at the beginning. Sorry. And I think we should take 15 seconds to summarize each of our side. So I'm going to do the against first. So you heard it. Innovation is risky, innovation's difficult, it has consequences which we often don't understand, and actually the best thing we should do is stick with the knitting, stick with the stuff we know, get the policies right, and actually that will be a much better world.
Fine. Well, I'd actually just like to make a point that I think that the opposition perhaps didn't focus entirely on the brief. When we are arguing for, or we are arguing the motion of technical innovation, so we need to be specific in our debate. So the Foresight did an excellent job of putting forward a whole range of different arguments of why innovation is so important, and really everyone here today is testament to that. We are all here because we are passionate about the innovation agenda, and we are all working day in, day out to contribute to innovation to make a better society for the future.
Okay, so let's see if anyone's been persuaded at that first round to change their vote. If you can go back to Slido, if we can have the graph back up behind me, please. What's happened is Slido is open, so you don't get to re-vote, you just get to shift. If you have changed your mind at all, this is the time when you can show it. And it looks like, oh, what a shame. It looks like my team is doing better than they were. Oh, look, it's going to go down now, isn't it?
Yes, come on, the fours.
But you're closing the gap. You've shifted it by a solid 4%. So yay, we're shifting the audience against innovation. All right, we're ready to go. We're keeping that at 46. I saw 46, 54 at the end. You now have 3 more minutes. 3 more minutes to counter the brilliant arguments that were presented on this side. It's going to be tough, but see what you can do. Off you go.
So it still seems this audience wants to go home and doesn't want to be here and doesn't want to listen to the conference. Maybe it's a message for you, Piers. I'm not sure what's going on here. But and anyway, you talk about ships getting lost at least, you know, the adventurer spirit at least. And you say, oh, we lost ships and something is going wrong there. And, you know, these guys, if they would have current technology called GPS, they wouldn't get lost. It's called innovation. It actually helps. And they would have better ships and it would go faster. Or maybe even they could have taken a plane. So maybe even satellite. They should sit at home and use Google Maps. So, you know, sometimes innovation can be good. It can be easier instead of complaining about what happened without innovation. So I think also one important point, you say that innovation slows down the progress. Well, in the end, I think innovation is actually speeding it up. You know, you talk about the old stuff. I think nowadays what happens in innovation is that you start collaborating with companies in an early stage. And you really go already from a very early idea together with companies already, with universities, with knowledge centers. You bring this to the market, and this idea to market phase is going faster and faster because of this new type of innovation. So if you talk about old style innovation, maybe you're right, you know, some professor thought of some idea, and then he brings it to a company, and the company doesn't believe it, has to test it. So this is the old style. I think the new style, actually, innovation goes much faster to market. So there is no time issue. Christian.
Yes, we talk about venture capitalism. Of course, in innovation, like in any investment, there is a risk, but there are also ways to mitigate the risks. And technical innovation, you know, exactly does that. I mean, thinks about the better ways to mitigate those risks. There is also legislation, there is a regulation that can apply specific rules to mitigate those risks. When I go further to the argument on about pollution and the late response of technical innovation to pollution, then think about the fact that technical innovation has long-term solutions to address pollution. If you think about the energy transitions, for instance, to clean energy, the passage from thermal energy to hydropower, wind power, solar power, that's a powerful example of how technical innovation can address in long-term environmental problems.
And when you talk about if you don't have innovation, you don't have any startups. So you can say startups fail, but without innovation, there are no startups. And then EASME can basically stop working, you know, the EU stops funding at least innovation. We can all stop at least, you know. There is no economy anymore.
Done. Thank you. The against. Let's set the clock for 3. And the counter arguments.
Well, we heard this morning the top pollution challenges from Daniel Calleja or from Susan Gardner. They showed us that the big problem is biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, all that caused by climate change. But fortunately, most of the speakers we had so far were confident that all these challenges can be addressed with established science and technology as long as we have coordinated action. Therefore, the real issue is not technical, it's behavior. It's our selfishness, our greed, our apathy. We don't dare to move. And that is not easy to solve with technical innovation. That only adds complexity, diverts resources, makes us lose time in things that are unpredictable. And while that, the world is growing fast, and globalization will continue to increase the consumerist mentality and the damages that it does to our society all over the earth. And again, the environment will suffer from this fast development that eats up resources. Therefore, it's our behavior that we have to change, not innovation. The wealthy countries need to lead the way in a new way of life, reducing their outsized environmental footprint.
Thank you. So, like Fiona said something along the lines of that we're not focusing on technical innovation. But if you read the statement, if I've written it down correctly, it says this House believes that technical innovation will be the main engine in solving global pollution challenges. So what I'm contesting is not that there's anything wrong with innovation, I'm just saying that it won't be the main engine. Most of the solutions already exist. Another thing is, you want to claim all the benefits of existing technologies, things that were invented maybe 100 years ago or 20 years ago. But then you should also sort of take on board the onus that industrialization has created, all the pollution of the rivers, all the species that we've lost already. So I wouldn't go there anyway. So the notion of innovation, of solving the environmental problems, to me is an absolute farce. Anyone supporting this stance, rather than acting with the means we have at our disposal today, would be a hypocrite, distracting minds from simply getting on with what needs to be done today. What we need is a mentality change also amongst consumers. We need to realize that even taking a selfie costs a lot of energy. Not just a smartphone, but what it causes elsewhere in the ether. And unfortunately, our political masters are also not setting the examples by traveling, I'm talking about the EU Parliament, traveling back and forth between Brussels and Strasbourg every 2 weeks. So hypocrisy is rife. We have to avoid the impacts we're having on the environment and act today, as our environment is already changing irreversibly. We cannot hide behind excuses to postpone.
Brilliant timing. Thank you very much. You know how this works. Get your phones out. Were you persuaded, though, those new, deeper counter-arguments? Let's put the line up there. Oh, it has almost become Brexit-like here, 51-49.
I'm just going to make a quick point about the behaviour comment. Behaviour change is more important than innovation. Well, I actually think that innovation drives behavioural change.
But does technical innovation...
Without innovation, we would not have a smartphone, and the smartphone is really driving a lot of behavioural change. So I'm just putting it out there.
I think this is a little unfair. Did you know as soon as she opened her mouth, it went back in their favour? It's just not fair. OK, we're now at 53-47. You've notched it up another percent. You're doing
Come
well.
on.
48-52. Look at this. It all hangs on the last minute. So get your minds together. Get your arguments ready. This needs to be concise. You've got 60 minutes to win it. Make these punchy. Get it
60
right.
seconds.
It's 60 seconds. The technical innovation of a watch is something I need. Are you ready? Go.
Their main point is that technical innovation is to blame, at least for the problems which we have at the moment, but that's not true. It's just at least policy. It's the use of the innovation. It's not the innovation itself. And now at least we are stuck with the choices they made in the past. Do we want to be stupid people and live like cavemen? Or do we want to go to the transition of a circular economy and live in an exciting world with new technologies and save our planet for our children?
Yes, and finally, technical innovation can really drive a change in the attitude of consumers and make energy consumption more efficient. If you think of smart grids, for instance, if you think of the concept of prosumers and other that are getting more and more fashionable.
Okay, that's good. They've laid their case out. Your final response.
Well, as Piers said, today is election day in the UK. So let's not dither and delay. Let's get the Green Deal done. The environmental problems are immediate, urgent. Many effects are irreversible. Solutions are available. So it's all about implementation, coordinated action. Adriano Battigliani said that very clear. Cedric Egger says support collaborative action. That was the highest voted point. And of course, Javier Fernandez said stakeholder engagement and prevention of pollution is the solution.
Come on, innovation is about industry staying ahead of the competition, even self-enrichment. And if it benefits the environment, then so much the better. This is what it's all about. And kid you not, innovation is about jobs, first of all. You mentioned yourself, what are the startups going to do? What's the point of having a startup, if it's not inventing something useful or that's going to really make a big change? I mean, it's not a goal in itself to finance startups. And then finally, okay, well, time's up.
You're done on time. Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause, please. Gentlemen, could I ask that you come and stand at the front, please, and not look behind you? And can I now ask you, as the audience, to have one last vote? This is your last chance to change your view, and I do encourage you to think about the arguments that were presented, not where your heart would take you, the arguments that were presented. So no looking behind, just facing forward, please. No, you're not allowed to see it.
You really entered
Let's see what the response is. No
spirit.
cheating, no cheating. Only I'm allowed to see it. And now let's put the graph up the back. Oh, look, they're looking behind anyway. All right, I'll let you see. For a brief moment, we did have 51-49.
I didn't see that. 52-48, Piers. Ooh, it's very exciting. I'm feeling nervous. Come on, the fours.
Hang on, we've swapped around. Whichever one's at the top. I didn't spot that that's happened. They've swapped around. As soon as it goes to the top, it drops back down.
Oh, we need to switch that round. Oh, 50-50.
And let's
well
pause
done,
it there, because
everyone.
that feels like a winning place to be.
Well done. That was
I
great
said at
fun.
the beginning that these volunteers had kindly stepped up to argue against their case. I'm going to start with the fours. Are you a believer in innovation, or were you arguing against your heart?
I think both. In the end, at least, it's only the combination of the two which works in that way. If you just do innovation and you don't do anything with it, was also the comment, and I think they're fair comments. You know, it should have a use. In the end, if you have the wrong policies, then there will be misuse. You don't use them in the right way. I think we have great examples of that in the US, great technologies, but they don't use them correctly. So it's a use on both sides. So in the end, yeah, I think 50-50 is perfect.
Yeah, I perfectly agree that there is no reason why to have a technical innovation if not to increase the benefits for consumers and citizens and human beings in general.
Now, were you really? Where's your heart, Mr. Financier, Mr. Only worried about the money?
I'm very much in favor of it. I really am, I promise. No, I thought that if you would have focused on, innovation normally costs 2 or 3% of, let's say, the budget of any, let's say, commercial company, that would have been, for me, a really winning argument. And you cannot argue against that. But obviously, we're talking only about innovation. And I think we took a slightly different interpretation of it. Only innovation looking forward and sort of taking everything that already exists as being the answer to these problems. That's why we could argue quite, let's say, forcefully. But deep down, of course, we're all for finding solutions that improve efficiencies and all of that.
So I have to go to Frank, and just in case no one's aware, Frank is the head of innovation at Aqualia that does some of the most exciting technical innovation that the water industry has ever seen. Frank, where was your heart in this debate?
Obviously, you forced me to commit public harakiri today in getting rid of my own job.
He will be available for employment as of tomorrow, I think.
And of course, every day I am confronted with the same arguments I try to defend today, that I'm completely useless. I'm honored that actually our banker says we should spend 2 or 3% of our income on innovation. I'm very happy that I can convince my chairman to spend 0.5%. And I actually promised him that by spending this 0.5% every year, he will get rid of his electricity bill in 10 years and abolish the carbon footprint of our company.
Awesome. Well, finally, I think, because Fiona and I obviously took sides, I should just say, just for clarity, that Fiona and I both work for a company called ISLE. We work with 300 or so water utilities around the world, helping them with technical innovation, identifying it and adopting it. I think it's fair to say that everyone on this audience everyone on this stage is fully committed to innovation and fully believing of it. The challenge I think that we've all got to take from this debate, fun though it was, is actually that not everybody is with us in our organizations or in our governments, and we often need to think their stances. So, just before you go off to coffee, can we have one last round of applause for these very brave souls?
Yeah, and thank you all for entertaining us all so well. It was good fun, so well done.
Can I see you back here in half an hour, please?
Piers, we've got a prize.
Oh, we've got a prize.
And we've actually, Guido's done brilliantly because he's just rustled up, we weren't expecting it to be a draw. And so he's rustled up a couple of extra prizes. So you could present the prizes for the against, and I will run over here and thank you very much. That's great.
Thank you. Well, in that case, everyone's a winner.
Yeah. Well done, everyone. Thank you. Yeah.
Can I see you back here in half an hour, please? Thank you.